Today we're going to talk about the biggest lie or myth about your gut microbiome. This will be a game changer. If you ask ChatGPT, WebMD, or Google, do antibiotics permanently wipe out the microbiome? The answer you're going to get is no. That is such a big lie. If you really understood what happens when you take an antibiotic or something to wipe out some of your microbes or all of your microbes and the consequences of what happens to them, you would think twice about taking antibiotics. Now, I'm not just talking about antibiotics. I'm talking about corticosteroids, as in prednisone. I took that every year for probably 7 to 10 years for my poison ivy. Junk foods severely destroy your microbiome. Another thing that was patented as an antibiotic, glyphosate. That's the herbicide, Roundup Ready. I mean, I've had antibiotics my whole life, and I had no idea the long-term effects that those create. Antibiotics wipe out certain strains of good microbes from your body. What you had as an abundant microbe now is replaced by something else. And that alteration is called dysbiosis. And chances are you have an increased population of antibiotic-resistant microbes. I didn't know that. That's huge. And it's very important to know what those strains are and to figure out how you can get them back. That's what I'm going to talk about today. Some of the microbes that are wiped out are called keystone microbes. If eliminated, affects the entire ecosystem of your gut. It can really put you at risk for all sorts of inflammatory conditions, autoimmune diseases, allergies, etc., etc. Now, before we kind of get into it too much, I think the really important thing to know is that 99% of your genes are not yours. They're microbial. You're mostly microbes.
You have a much lower percentage of actual human cells.
So our bodies have like 20,000 genes. The microbiome has 3 million. So on one hand, if you have the right microbiome, you can have a good immunity, you can have low risk of disease, you can make all your neurotransmitters. On the other hand, if we have an alteration of your microbiome over here and too many bad bacteria versus the good, you're going to have leaky gut. You're going to be more susceptible to autoimmune diseases, small intestinal bacteria overgrowth. And then those microbes in the wrong place are going to steal your nutrition. So you're going to have nutritional deficiencies. And the question is, how do we get the right keystone bacteria back? There's no yogurt that you can get that has even close to the number of microbes that you have in your body. But the good news is there's really only maybe 5 to 7 keystone species that can help put things into balance. You see, a lot of the microbes that are missing that you no longer have can be increased by just changing the environment and feeding the microbes certain things. Prevotella is missing in 70 to 80% of the population. This is the microbe that helps you balance your blood sugar. This is the microbe that normally is supposed to get rid of oxalates. I don't know if you've heard about oxalates, but that's the thing that can increase your risk for kidney stones. And that's the microbe that really gets killed off when you take antibiotics. All right, next one is this weird name, Akkermansia. If you're deficient in this, you're not going to be able to produce the mucus barrier that protects you against pathogens. You're also going to have a risk of metabolic syndrome and obesity. And 40 to 60% of the population is deficient in this microbe, but hang in there. I'm going to show you how to increase some of these microbes. All right, next one is Faecalibacterium. If you're deficient in this, you're going to have more inflammation and more risk of autoimmune diseases. 30 to 50% of the population is missing this microbe. So many diseases originate in the gut, and now you know why. Because if you don't have that microbe that's supposed to protect you, then you're susceptible to getting that disease. All right, last one is Ruminococcus. 50 to 60% of the population is missing this one. And if you're deficient in it, you're going to lose the ability to digest certain fibers from plants. This could explain why so many people, just when they even have a salad or any vegetables, boy, they just get bloating and they do not do well, but they thrive on the carnivore diet. Interesting. So here's the secret, okay? You can change the environment that your microbiome lives in. So let's just go through the list of things that you can take. Polyphenols. You can get polyphenols in green tea and also in certain vegetables, garlic, onions, asparagus. You can change the environment to increase the diversity of microbes, consuming fermented things like sauerkraut, kimchi, pickled vegetables, things like that. There's a microbe called Bacteroides fragilis. This is a microbe that most people have right now. But what's interesting is what it does. It resists tumors and cancer. With this catch-22, you must also have enough vitamin D. And this is why vitamin D is such a powerful anti-tumor, anti-cancer vitamin. And of course, if you already have leaky gut, okay, there's several things you should know. Number one, zinc carnosine is one of the best remedies. L-glutamine is good. Bone broth, colostrum can help heal a leaky gut, and doing intermittent fasting all can help. Now, I saved the best microbe for last. This microbe is missing in 95 to 96% of the population. It is so important because it prevents small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. It makes 7 natural antibiotics that kill only the bad bacteria and leave the good guys alone. It increases the population of other good microbes without even taking those microbes. But even more importantly, it increases a super high level hormone called oxytocin. Now, oxytocin is typically known when women are lactating, breastfeeding, or they're in contractions to release the baby. But oxytocin is also considered the bonding or love hormone. It does lower cortisol. It also increases the thickness of your skin. This microbe can be cultivated. So in other words, you can make it into this yogurt compound with high levels of this single microbe to create a therapeutic effect on your body. In this video, I'm going to show you how to do it after an interview I do with Dr. William Davis. The doctor wrote the book Super Gut, where I learned this information on this amazing microbe. So I want to show you this interview with him, and then I want to roll right into how to make it. And after you make it, you put it in the fridge, and you just consume like a half a cup a day. And if you want to make more, you actually don't need any more probiotics. You already started with 1 capsule that you'll mix in with this concoction, which I'm going to explain how to make it. And then what you do is you take 2 tablespoons of this probiotic mixture you made to start the next batch. And you can keep doing this over and over and over. It's actually very inexpensive. But let's just roll right into Dr. William Davis's interview. How did you kind of isolate or stumble on this very specific microbe? I mean, there's other microbes, but I think the main one you talk about a lot is the L or Lactobacillus reuteri. So can you tell me a little bit about how you kind of stumbled on that microbe versus other ones?
Well, it was real simple. I make most of my ideas by mistake, by making big blunders. So that's how I came to the wheat belly idea, trying to minimize the expression of small LDL particles. As you know, the real cause for heart disease, not this nonsense about LDL cholesterol. So I saw people, you and I have a lot of success in helping people regain health. And so with wheat, grain, and grain elimination, sugar elimination, and a handful of common nutrients that are lacking in modern life, and we see all kinds of wonderful things like a reversal of type 2 diabetes, loss of fatty liver, weight loss, etc. But it was clear that was incomplete. Even when I added some basic microbiome strategies like a high-potency multi-species probiotic or prebiotic fibers and fermented foods, I still saw some residual problems. For instance, somebody says, my rheumatoid arthritis is much better. I got rid of the biologic injections. I got rid of the prednisone, but I'm still taking naproxen as needed for occasional mild flare-ups. Why? So I looked for what else there was. And I started thinking about the hormone oxytocin. I don't even remember why. There's a really crazy set of Frankenstein experiments being conducted by a woman named Irina Conboy. She's been at Harvard, Stanford. I think she's now at UC Berkeley. And she did something really creepy. They took an old rat and cloned it so that they got a young rat that was immunologically and genetically identical, and then connected their circulatory systems. Yuck. Well, then they called it heterochronic parabiosis, 2 times next to life. Well, lo and behold, the old rat becomes young. And so they asked, well, what are the mediators? That work is ongoing. But the first mediator they isolated, there are a bunch of peptides. The first mediator that they isolated was oxytocin, what people regard as the hormone of love and empathy, what some ladies regard as the drug they get to induce labor when they're pregnant at term pregnancy. Well, then an MIT group, a cancer group, were exploring the anti-cancer effects of Lactobacillus reuteri, and they discovered all kinds of unexpected effects. The first thing they observed was that their fur, in their words, became rich and luxurious.
Wow.
So they started doing all kinds of crazy things to these mice, like inflicting wounds in their skin, and watched healing time cut by half. They watched old mice become young again. So, for instance, if you look at muscle that's atrophied in older mice, young muscle cells come back. Their libido, their mating behavior comes back. The immune system is amplified. In other words, it changed. They even did this. They did a crazy study. They gave two groups of mice a lousy diet, purposefully, meant to mimic fast food. The mice that got just fast food got fat and old and lost their hair, stopped mating. They got old and died. The mice who got the same crappy diet, but with reuteri, stayed slender, rich fur, mated. They stayed young until death.
So, okay, so this experiment with the mice, I think that was the missing point. They gave them a certain microbe, L. reuteri, because of oxytocin. They wanted to increase it.
They did, but they didn't set out to do just that. They kind of stumbled on that. So, like a lot of things I do, a lot of this was by accident. So they wanted to understand, first of all, why that rich, luxuriant fur issue. And it became clear they opened a whole Pandora's box of effects. Well, I got that same microbe. It was available commercially from a Swedish company, but it was available as tablets for infants. So very teensy-weensy doses. So I simply reasoned, let's ferment it as something that looks like yogurt, but we're going to ferment it using prolonged fermentation. So reuteri will, as you recall, microbes don't have sex. There's no mommy, daddy, male, female microbe. They just double. So reuteri doubles every 3 hours at human body temperature. So I made yogurt. It's not yogurt, of course. It looks and smells like yogurt, but I used prolonged fermentation. I allowed 12 doublings. I performed something called flow cytometry, just a way to count microbes. And we get 300 billion. So far more, about 1,000-fold more than the original tablets for babies. I just started talking about it. Gave to all my neighbors. I started eating it.
Okay, so the question I have is, so when you did you initially know how to do that, or you just go, okay, let me try something, and well, I guess that didn't work. How did you know to ferment it for 36 hours?
Hit and miss.
Okay.
And then I did repeated flow cytometry counts. It became clear the number I first picked, 36 hours, was the sweet spot. That's where you get maximum number, at least as yogurt. And if you go to 48 hours, you get a plateau. You actually get an increase in dead microbes. So 36 hours, which, by the way, is very different than what they do in commercial yogurt making, which is 6 to 12 hours.
It's ridiculous. I guess the reason, at first, did you think, well, I think we'll just take this microbe as a supplement, right? Were you thinking at first, like, oh, we'll just take it and it'll work just by taking it?
You can, but the quantity of in the original product, which called BioGaia Gastrus, Gastrus, the infant tablets. So when you take it, nothing happens. When I called the company, I talked to the exec. I said, "Hey, I'm playing with this your tablet's making yogurt." They said, "You can't. No one's ever made yogurt from it." And they said, "We don't know anything about that MIT nonsense. Don't call us again." They essentially shut it all down. So I said, "Okay, fine." So I made the yogurt. And now we have thousands and thousands of people doing it. And the crazy thing is, so as elegant as that MIT work was, we're learning new lessons, both from human experience and some limited efforts in clinical trials. We're seeing all kinds of things happen. But you know what? As you know, usually when you see stuff happen in mice, it's usually not corroborated in humans. It falls apart. In this instance, to my great surprise, everything seen in mice has proven true in humans.
Wow.
So we see a restoration of youthful musculature, an increase in strength. Older guys over 50, get about a 50% rise in testosterone. Older ladies get a restoration of vaginal moisture and sensation. There's an increase in libido, which leads to some very embarrassing stories. There is a presumptive increase in the immune responses. People seem to get better faster. There's an acceleration of healing from minor wounds. And I tell this to ladies. I'm sure your audience is a lot like mine. My audience is 87% female. And they all say this to me, incredibly. They say, Oh, we don't care about muscle and the immune response. We just want better skin. I said, what? All right, fine. So I did a little clinical trial on ladies, big ladies. I said, don't change your diet. Don't change your exercise program. Just take these. That was reuteri. I added some other things to amplify the skin effects. Collagen peptides, hyaluronic acid, and the carotenoid astaxanthin. And we did high resolution skin ultrasound, and we showed a big increase in dermal thickness. Ladies are thrilled because they lose their crow's feet and their smile lines, blah, blah, blah.
Wow.
But I happen to measure the waist circumference. It's free. You and I don't have the budget of pharma. We don't have billions of dollars to spend. We have maybe tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars to spend in our clinical trials. So I measured waist circumference free. And to my great surprise, this was Christmas Eve, I get the waist circumference. I said, no way. They lost huge amount of waist circumference, up to 8.5 inches. No change in diet. Even more remarkably, they didn't lose weight. Well, how can that be? Well, I think consistent with the animal evidence and what I'm seeing anecdotally play out in thousands of people is you lose abdominal fat, but you restore youthful muscle. We're seeing that play out. So I think what I stumbled on by accident
This is huge.
is a way to shift body composition. The complete opposite, by the way, of these garbage GLP-1 agonist drugs.
Yeah.
That, of course,
Remember.
cause huge loss of muscle, guarantees weight regain. So if a person has a choice, stop the drug and see your health deteriorate when you regain all the weight as fat, or stay on the drug forever and be held hostage by the pharmaceutical industries. So
I think even one of your videos you mentioned you personally gained how much muscle mass?
So in my 60s, I gained about 13 pounds of muscle and my strength increased by 50%. I mentioned to you in emails, I hate going to the gym. I can't stand it.
Right.
So I go 15 minutes. On a busy week, I go 15 minutes once a week. I haven't been to the gym in 5 months, by the way, but I do other things. But so that's what I'm seeing. Now, I don't know if that happens to everybody. I do see ladies, they get mad at me. They say, hey, I'm doing your program in the reuteri and I gained 8 pounds. I asked them, have you looked in the mirror? Have you measured your waist? They said, well, yeah, my waist is smaller. My shoulders are firmer. My thighs and buttocks and neck are firmer. So presumptively, we got to do this more formally, like do a DEXA study or something like that to formally quantify the shift in muscle and all that business. But, all we're doing though, right, is replacing things that you should have had in your body all along.
Okay, so this microbe, obviously, we were supposed to have it initially, and I'm guessing some past antibiotic wiped it out, or bad food or something. And I think you mentioned even in your book or another video that what percentage of the population just doesn't have this microbe anymore?
About 96%.
Gosh.
So it is very susceptible, as are many lactobacilli, to common antibiotics. So if you took amoxicillin 30 years ago for an upper respiratory infection, it wiped out all your reuteri. What's so fascinating about that is if we sequence the microbiomes of somebody living in the highlands of New Guinea or the Brazilian rainforest and the Amazon, people unexposed to antibiotics, etc., they all have reuteri. They all have it. If we sequence wild mammals like deer or giraffes or lions, they all have reuteri, suggesting it's necessary for mammalian health. It's us who've lost it. The original discoverer, Dr. Gerhard Reuter, said it was everywhere in the 1960s. He got it from the breast milk of a German breastfeeding mom, and he found it in stool and other body fluids. Over his 40-year academic career, he found it increasingly difficult to find it. It started to disappear. And since then, that's been corroborated. It's virtually disappeared from the human microbiome. And I think that's why we're seeing such over-the-top effects, restoring something people have lost and doing so at very high counts.
Wow. So then what happens, you lose this microbe, which also, by the way, tends to protect against small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, right? It does a lot of things in the small intestine too. And then it probably, because it's not there, then you start getting this invasion from the large intestine climbing up to the small intestine. Is that what happens too sometimes?
Yeah, exactly, yes. So loss of those beneficial species, this species of lactobacillus and others, allow the overproliferation of proteobacteria, fecal microbes like E. coli and Klebsiella that have taken up residence in virtually half the U.S. population. So it's probably the worst epidemic to ever occur in our species, and there's science behind that. But so we have 24 feet of small intestine infested by fecal microbes. Now, as you recall, the small intestine is very permeable. That's where we absorb nutrients. So when those microbes that live and die over just a period of few hours, they don't live very long, they release some of the components of their cell wall, such as the endotoxin component. And that gains access to your bloodstream. That's called endotoxemia, of course, and that is a major driver of weight gain, dementia. It's probably one of the most important factors causing multiple forms of cancer, type 2 diabetes, cognitive impairment. So in other words, it's going to cause us to reconsider virtually all human disease in light of the contribution, initiation, or exacerbation of endotoxemia.
Some of these bad microbes, these pathogens, they either leak off or release something negative about that then forms this infection that gets into the bloodstream that starts creating a cascade of bad effects.
Yes. So, people have suspected this issue of gut leak for many decades,
Yeah.
but it finally got corroborated by Patrice Canny and his Belgian group in 2007. And since corroborated numerous times since, it is a major driver. It terrifies me to think how we didn't know about this thing. The great thing about reuteri is, so most microbes colonize the colon only.
Right. The large intestine. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. The reuteri colonize the 24 feet of small intestine and the colon,
Wow.
where it takes up residence and does something wonderful. It produces what are called bacteriocins, natural antibiotics effective against fecal microbes. So the loss of reuteri probably was a big part of the reason why this happened, and restoring reuteri is a big part of the solution to correct that problem. So we're seeing SIBO recede via normalization of breath hydrogen gas, with restoration of Lactobacillus reuteri, but I've combined it with Lactobacillus gasseri because that's another big bacteriocin producer and small intestinal colonizer. And then we've thrown in a strain of Bacillus subtilis or subtilis because of its extraordinary bacteriocin. And so far, making yogurt, out of those three, we get about 90% normalization of breath hydrogen gas and all the wonderful effects that accompany that. Weight loss plateaus are broken, hemoglobin A1C finally goes below 5. All that kind of great stuff happens just by restoring these keystone, what I think are keystone microbes, via something that looks and smells like yogurt.
And also your sleep, right?
And I'm a chronic insomniac. Terrible. for decades. With reuteri, I sleep wonderfully. Not everybody gets that. Maybe half the people get that. And by the way, there's some other microbes that have magnificent effects on sleep. Another one is Lactobacillus KCI Shirota strain. That's available as this goofy little product called Yakult. It's an awful little product. It's skim milk and sugar, but it's a good source of that microbe. And so as a chronic insomniac, I take the reuteri, sleeping 8-9 hours straight through rare awakenings. I add the KCI Shirota as yogurt, and I sleep 12 hours a night. I had to stop it because it was so overwhelming. That it varies among people, but it's and these are effects not yet described in the scientific literature. So because we're experiencing it on a large scale.
You stumbled on something that's so fascinating to me because I'm into the farming and the soil and the microbes. This is all human body stuff. I definitely want to stay connected and keep picking your brain. But so there's a book that I highly recommend everyone go out and get. It's Super Gut. And also I'm going to put your website down below. And you also have a course. I'll put some information about what the specific microbe that you recommend, because there's different strains. And you figured out the right strains, so that's going to be really key to get that. I'll put that link down below. But wow, this is huge. I'm so interested in this topic. I'm just blown away. But anyway, I wanted to just pull you on and not take too much of your time. But I want to thank you for that data, and also I'll just going to roll right into next how to make this if someone wants to make it, and if they want details, they can go to your blog site. How about that?
Terrific. Yeah. One of my interests is this is all happening, right?
Yeah.
At a time of record social isolation,
Right.
divorce, suicide is at record levels, 36% increase. between 2000 and 2020. And I did not know this. The psychology community has been formally measuring and tabulating the rise of narcissistic behavior. And that curve looks like this 45-degree incline. So now we have a way, perhaps, we can't address all social ills, of course, with yogurt, but perhaps we can have an impact because of the restoration. What I'm seeing is a restoration of the intensity of love and affection for other people, desire for human companionship, increase in generosity, and the acceptance of other people's opinions. So that's my goal in doing all this. I think we can change human behavior in a good way.
I can get behind that. That's awesome. Well done. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So this is very simple how we make this. We're going to take the probiotic, 1 capsule, and then we will open it up. And then we're going to take inulin. This is a tablespoon. Take 2. Take organic 1/2 and 1/2, just to make a paste. Mix it up really good. Don't put too much of that 1/2 and 1/2 in there right off the bat. Just about 2 tablespoons. And then we can pour the rest of this 1/2 and 1/2 in there. 1 quart. I'm going to mix this up really good. We'll take a container, 2 containers, and we'll pour some of this in here. Even it out pretty good. Okay, we're putting this mixture into the yogurt maker. We have 2 of them, right? Very carefully. Okay, now we have to add water to it. So I'm going to pour the water like so. And I want that level to be at the same level as the mixture inside the containers. We now have the water at the level of a little bit more than I wanted, so that's fine. Okay, here's the next part, and of course if you have a different machine you're going to have to just do the same type of thing. On the left we have temperature and time, so we can press this once, okay, and then we want this at 99 degrees Fahrenheit, so we're going to bring this down, okay, and then press start on that. And then now what we're going to do, we have 8 hours, we're going to go up to 36 hours. Okay, and then we press start again. And guess what? We're done. We're going to put the top on it, and then we're going to wait for 36 hours. And then after that's done, we are going to then put it in the refrigerator for storage. Okay, we're pulling it out of the refrigerator after 36 hours and leaving it in the refrigerator for a couple hours to cool down. And now we're going to consume 1/2 cup of this every single day. It's amazing. It's rich. It's delicious. You can add berries to it. If you need to add a sweetener, go ahead. But I think you'll find it quite delicious. 1/2 cup a day.